Good day, class. I welcome you to Metric Hub and thank you for tuning on and also subscribing, following, keeping connected with our channel. I welcome you once again. I just bring to you today another piece of important presentation regarding evolution on sources of evidence for evolution. Sources of evidence for evolution, it forms a very key part also when we go to our final national examinations. So without wasting any time, I'm just going to quickly go through this. Uh, we need to understand it that sources of evolution are found in various, we have got different sources, which amongst some of them include the following. I can say it is one, fossil records. We can have sources of evidence from fossil record. We have got modification by descent and structural similarities. I'm sure that you have seen a question paper where you are asked about the analogous and homologous structures. I'm sure that you know or you have once seen that or you have once heard about that. Genetic similarities as number 3. Genetic similarities, it also forms part and it is a key in regard to sources of evidence for evolution, which we need to understand from our previous first chapter, DNA, that related organisms can be seen because of the relativeness or the similarities in their genetic makeup. Organisms which have got the similar DNA are to be confirmed that they are related. That can also be related to the understanding of DNA profiling. I'm sure that you remember that one. And then number 4, we can talk about biogeography as another source of evidence of evolution. Biogeography, the distribution of organisms, living organisms across the earth. Across the earth, we call that biogeography, which is explained by examples such as the finches birds by by Darwin's theory, which forms part of an example of that. And then, of course, we can have other forms of evidence, such as the chemical evidence from proteins, which can as well be related to what to genetic similarities. So, without wasting any time, I'm saying these are the sources to say when we are to explain evolution. If we are to understand that evolution have occurred, where do we refer or where is that information? Where can we get information? Where can we get evidence that can support that evolution once or evolution is taking place or has taken place? So please understand that these are the sources. And if you can see any question which would ask you about that, take note of this. And then amongst or with in addition to this, we can also talk about cultural evidence, which might not be listed here, which shows the form of life which once lived or which is lived by people, by a certain group of people, which would also identify them, which can also identify the form of life that was or that is taking place there. So let me quickly just go through and explain these evidences one by one. We have got the fossil record as a source of ancient life. So we are saying fossil. I'm sure that you remember that in your previous grades, you have learned that fossils are remains or traces of organisms that lived millions of years ago. So organisms that lived millions of years ago, which means that they died, they form fossils. We have got their remains, which have been buried and have been can be excavated or can be found or can be traced to explain evolution. Generally, we need to understand that the hard body parts such as the exoskeletons or the bones are the ones that forms fossils. These are the ones that can form fossils. The body parts, the hard body parts or the bones are the ones that can show the fossils. Hence, we are saying that such remains in our evolution topic. I'm sure that you remember the concept or the unit which is to talk about the the skeletons of different hominids, which also need to explain uh, the type of the foreign magnum, as well as to explain the body orientation, as to say quadrupedal or bipedal, which are also explained with those things. So the fossilized remains or organisms that no longer exist today show that uh, shows us that life on Earth has been changing for a very long time. So what we are saying is, focusing on the remains of the organism that no longer exist today, we can as well be understand that we can as well be able to understand that life on Earth has been changing and it is continuously changing over long periods of time, because the fossils provide us with valuable evidences of the history of the Earth over the past years. So with fossil evidence class, understand that we are able to explain and to relate the extent which is organisms that are living and the extinct, the organisms which are no longer there. So there can be a comparative analysis there or a comparative evaluation which can be done to understand and explain how life on Earth is evolving. So we do need to understand that such understandings of fossils or remains of the past are really uh, put forward because of some specific individuals or by specific scientists who are involved in that, such as people who study the earth structure, are the ones who can discover these remains, and they are the ones who can also do the radiometric dating or relative dating, which can be used to trace the age of various fossils. So we have got geologists, scientists who study the earth's crust by looking at the types of the soils that are, I mean, types of the rocks that are found in different places. Geologists are able to tell the type of soil. Hence, the type of soil within a place can as well be explained based on the fossils or based on the decomposition or based on the various remains that are found within that place. So we are saying geologists, they can date rocks by studying the chemical elements in them. The rocks can be dated by studying the chemical elements in them. This means that geologists can work out the ages of fossils. So in regard to this concept of fossil evidence, we are saying it is brought to light, or it can be calculated to be evidenced or to be visualized or to be understood by the influence of also geologists who can be able to date rocks by studying the chemical elements in them. Hence, they can work out the age of fossils from the age of the rocks in which they find the fossils. From the age of what of rocks in which they find the fossils. Or scientists know the age of certain types of fossils. From one place, they can date the new fossils that has been found in the same place using that information, which I'm saying is relative dating. The relative dating is to say we have found a certain new a new fossil can be found in a place, and then it can be possible for scientists to also be able to calculate the age of such fossils based on the what on the type of fossils that are found within that place. So again, we have got what is called the plantology, the study of fossils. Plantology, which is the study of fossils, and then the people who study that are called plantologists. Gists are the scientists who are involved or who specializes or who have specialized in the study of fossils. But plantology is the study of fossils. Plantology is a discipline of study that focuses on what? On fossils. So fossils show us that many of the organisms lived in the past, and also we are also, however, about 90% of these species that have ever lived are now extinct. I'm saying extinct means no longer living, no longer, no longer living, or we can say no longer existing. no longer living or no longer existing. So extant is the opposite of what? Of extinct. Extant meaning to say that still living. Extant can be defined as organisms that are still living. So I said fossils are able to show us how life has evolved over some millions of years ago based on the comparative analysis of the extant and also the extinct. So in that regard, fossils can be able to give or to provide sources of evidence or can be able to act as a source of evidence for evolution. That is one thing that we should understand. So the fossil record provides a history of life. Fossil records provides a history of past life on Earth. So how does fossils help us? It provides history of past life on Earth, and that life is a single, and that life began as a single-celled bacteria about something like 3.6 million years ago. That is one thing there. So one, it provides history of the past. Fossils provides history of the past, and then fossils provides clues about the climate and environment. It provides clues about the climate and environment millions of years ago. So it provides us an understanding of how the climate and environment have changed over millions of years ago. That is one other thing again that we can give there. It provides us with what? With an understanding of how climate and also environment changed over millions of years ago. For example, if paleontologists find fish fossils in mountainous areas, they know that the area was once covered by watermelon. A long time ago. Do you see what we are talking about as an example in this regard? We are saying paleontologists can find fish fossils in mountainous areas. They therefore know that the area was covered by water some millions of years ago, which can also be explained as to say environmental or climate change. To say millions of years ago, certain mountains were buried in the waters. There were no mountains in those areas. They were basically like oceans. There were bodies of water that were there. But of now, if geologists or paleontologists, exactly, paleontologists are able to find fossils in such mountainous areas, which are just dry places with no water, with no evidence of water around them. It shows that climate has changed. It explains that the area was once covered by water millions of years ago. So it is also another source, or it is also giving an understanding of life that once happened in a place before some millions of years ago. Hence, we are saying it provides clues about the climate and environmental changes that have taken place millions of years ago. Again, number three, fossil record also shows us how living organisms have changed and developed over time. It also shows us how living organisms have changed and developed over time. When scientists study the fossil record, they look for similarities and differences which may exist in the type, origin, and functions of body structures. They can also provide differences and similarities in type, in origin, and functions of body structures. This provides us or provides people with clues about the relationship between extinct fossils and extant that are still living. I think this has also been mentioned. I mentioned it already to say that with fossil record, we are able to understand the extent and the extinct. We are able to understand the extent and the extinct. So that is how fossils are showing or can be able to explain that. But anyway, having said that, all these things have happened or can help us, we need also to understand that the limitations of fossils or the limitations of fossil record fossils as examples, or why, how does it comprehensively explain evolution? It might also not give us enough information. Why do I say that? Because we are saying fossils are only found, or we can only have the exoskeletons of organisms that can, I mean, the exoskeletons, they are the only ones that can fossilize, which means to say that organisms which have got soft body tissues without the bones and so forth, they cannot fossilize. Hence, we cannot be able to trace and explain the lives that happened of such soft-bodied organisms that existed millions of years ago. So we need to understand the limitations of fossils as an evidence of evolution. Again, another limitation is that fossils as a source of evolution, as a source of evidence, its limitation again is the fact that uh, for fossilization to take place, it mustn't be disturbed. The process of fossilization, it takes millions of years or it takes a very long time. So if any other earth movements might take place, we might not be able to have fossils of organisms that might have existed within, or we might not be able to have such evidences, such as, I mean, due to reasons such as that, to say that the process of fossilization has been disturbed. There are certain earth movements that might have taken or that might have heated certain places as mud flow, earth flow, and so forth and so forth. Such can as well disturb or destabilize the process of what? Of fossilization, which can therefore not provide us with enough evidence when it is going to be based or when it going to be used as a reference of what? Of source of evidence of evolution. We have got modification by descent and structural similarities as number two. I'm saying as number two from the past, which I've said, sources of evidence of evolution. So we have got fossils. Number two is modification by descent and structural similarities, which in grade 11 you studied the examples of body plans and how they can be modified or changed. How body plans can be modified and changed or changed. Therefore, we talk about modification of body plans provide us with evidence of evolutionary changes. Modification of body plans. The body plans can also provide us, we are saying body plans can provide evidence for what? Evidence of evolution of evolutionary change. They provide evidence of evolutionary change. Some body structures are analogous. Number one, some body structures are what? Are analogous. These are structures that appear to be similar, have similar functions, but evolved in different ways. We are saying analogous structures class NB. Analogous structures are features that appear to be similar, have similar functions, but have evolved in different ways. Examples of such are the wings, or I mean the wings of what? Of butterflies, birds, and birds. These wings, we are saying the wings of butterflies, birds, and birds are examples of analogous structures. The wings of these three animals have the same function. They have the same function. They have the same function for flying. The wings of birds, and butterflies are analogous structures. They've got a similar function or the same function for flying, but they all evolved separately. They evolved separately and have slightly different structure, which is also an example of convergent evolution. This is an example of convergent evolution. It is an example of convergent evolution, which is when organisms that are closely related evolve similar adaptations independently. Organisms that are not closely related, they evolve similar adaptations independently. Independently as to say that each organism is undergoing its own adaptation or acclimatization to the environment, to the environment, to the habitat that it is within, and then there is no gene flow within or against, I mean within or around the different three types of these birds that we are talking about. Each one of them is independent from each other. They are evolving without interbreeding, without any form of interference. As to say the birds and the butterfly, they share certain something. There is no gene flow there. Hence we say that the evolution or the evolution, I mean the evolving, it actually happened separately, and there was no what there is they have not evolved, they evolved similar adaptations that have taken place independent from each other. So we have got to understand that these are called what? These are called analogous structures, which I said that analogous structures, analogous structures, features that appear to be similar, have similar functions, but evolved in different ways, or have a different origin. The origin is different, but we are saying the structures, they appear to be similar, they have similar functions, evolved in different ways. So hence, you need also to take note of what, of the analogous structures. And then in that same concept, you must also be able to explain what, you must also be able to explain the convergent evolution, which is when organisms not closely related, organisms that are not closely related, evolve similar adaptations independently. You see this also on question number 1.1.1.2, which is going to give you questions to do with what, with this terminology or the scientific definitions of different statements that will be given. Similar, I mean, organisms that are not closely related evolve similar adaptations independently is called what? Convergent evolution. It is called convergent evolution. Let us quickly go to number still on modification by descent and structural similarities. We also need to talk about homologous structures. Homologous, homo, I'm sure you know that homo means what? Homo means same. Homo means same. Homo means same. So we have got homologous structures are characteristics that are shared by related organism because they inherited them from a common ancestor. Hence, you can see that this analogous and homologous structures, there is quite a big difference with the fact that homologous structures are characteristics that are shared by related organisms. The organisms are related because they have inherited them from a common ancestor. They inherited them from a common ancestor. The way inherited characteristics change over time in related organisms is called modification by descent. When the inherited characteristics change over time in related organisms, that is explained as what? Modification by descent. Modification by descent. An example is the similarity in the basic four-limb structures. The four-limb structures, the basic four-limb structures of all the vertebrates that you studied in grade 11. Of course, I'm sure that you have once heard of that. You can also see in the pictures that I'm going to show you above there, which the bones on the front flippers of a whale are homologous to the bones in a human arm, yet they have evolved into different structures and functions. So homologous structures are evidence of what? Of divergent evolution. It's an example of divergent evolution. Divergent evolution, I'm saying homologous structures are an evidence of what? Of divergent evolution, which is when species evolve from a common ancestor and share similar characteristics. We are saying divergent, it is when species evolved from a common ancestor, species evolved from a common ancestor and share similar characteristics. We have got examples as birds have the same shape of pelvis as a group of extinct dinosaurs. The pelvis in birds, which is also similar to the extinct dinosaurs. This shows that these dinosaurs were once a common ancestor for modern birds. We are saying the modern bird that we see today, it evolved from what? From where? From the dinosaurs, because there is what? There is a pelvis that is found in these birds of today, which is a characteristic, a feature that is inherited from what? From those ancient dinosaurs there. So you can see similar structures of the four limbs that indicate the similar. I'm saying in question papers, you could see this, you could see the cat, you can see the human arm, you can see the lizard, you see the whale, the flipper of the whale. These are examples of showing, they are showing what? They are showing homologous structures. Homologous structures. They show homologous structures as to say that you can understand that these are homologous structures which are being shown in this case. So they show there is a similarity, which means to say that they evolved from a similar ancestor. I can give a typical and a quick analysis with the what? With the cat, human, and the lizard, even also the whale. I can mark to say this structure of the humerus is there. We have this one is there. We also have on the lizard, it is also there. We can talk about the radius. The radius also, we can make it as to say, in the cat, we have got the radius also, which is here. We have also the radius there. We have also the radius in what? In the lizard, it is also there. We also have the radius, which is also found on the flipper of the whale. You understand? So this, without wasting any time, I can even go on to mention the what? I can even go on to mention all these, the thumbs, or the fingers that are shown here. I can also even mention to say we have got number 3, the carpel, which is also, we have got the carpel in this one. We have got the carpel also on the whale. We have got the carpel on the lizard. If you can see these, they are all similar structures that you can see to explain that there is what? There is similarity in these organisms that are shown here, and then I can even mention them there. So where I've mentioned or where I've marked 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, it means this is a similar structure, or this is a similar organ, a similar bone that is found in all these different organisms, which is showing homologous. They are actually indicating homologous structures. I'm sure that we can together appreciate and understand that these are actually indicating that these organisms, they've got what? They are having characteristics that shade from what? Because they inherited them from a common ancestor. So I've already explained the homologous structures as I've said there, and then evolutionary change often involve the loss of structures. There is evolutionary change which often involves the loss of structures that were once useful to the ancestors of an organism but are no longer useful in the current environment. In the current environment or the body plan of the organism of today. So such we can say that these are visual structures. These are small, poorly developed structures that are inherited from a what? From a common ancestor, but have no real use. They have no real use, such as the human appendix. We have got the human appendix, or the whales and some snakes have the pelvis and undeveloped hind legs, which are hind leg bones, yet they have no hind limbs there. So what we are saying is that structures that are small, poorly developed, that are inherited from a common ancestor but have no real use in the current environment, or which is because they are not useful, they are no longer useful. We call them visual structures. Visual structures, you need to understand that those are such structures that we are talking about, small, poorly developed structures that are inherited from a common ancestor. We found them in the organisms of today, but they are no longer useful. They have no real use. The human appendix, for example, it shows that from the hominid family where humans evolved, they used to have a tail, which was a balancing structure. The tail was used for balancing when the hominids climbing on rocks, in trees and so forth. So what we are saying is that such appendix right now, people no longer climb on I mean, they no longer live in mountains. People no longer live in trees and so forth. So the condition and the fact of balancing or the appendix is no longer there. But we see and we can understand that humans have got an appendix, which is actually an example of a visual structure, which is also the pelvises and I mean undeveloped hind legs that are found in some whales and snakes. So such is an example of that. Let's talk about evidence number 3 as source of evidence of evolution. Source of evidence of evolution. Others they can say embryology. Embryology, obviously the study of the various embryos of different organisms. So in terms of the development of embryo, we can as well be able to understand and calculate the evidence of evolution to say why such different organisms, their embryos, they look alike. I can show you. Let's just look on the board here. This is a fish. We have got a fish here. We have got a chick. We have got a chick. We have got a human. And then we have got a pig. So if you can look on these different embryos, I'm saying these are also, we can give the different trimesters of development that I can say. To say these are different trimesters. I mean, these are the different trimesters, as to say, we can say the first trimester, we can say second, and then we can say the third, which can also be fourth as well. So what I'm saying is, if you can look on these embryos of many different animals are similar. These similarities support the idea of modification by descent, or organisms that have evolved from a common ancestor. When we can look at these individuals or at these young ones, they can explain that these organisms have evolved from a common ancestor class. There is a similarity that is justified by having similar things, that are similar structures that are existing there. So the vertebrate embryos are a good examples of modification by descent, which I have talked about there, to say the changes which would take place in organisms with the passage of time. We call that modification by descent, to say from ancient times, millions of years ago, versus the years that we are today, there is a descent modification, there is an adjustment, there is a structural difference that can be explained, which we are saying this can be explained in the early stages of development. Uh, I'm saying in the early stages of development, it is not easy to tell the difference between the embryos of fish in the early stages of development. I mean, in the early stages of development. Let's look on the first one there. If we are given these three, I mean these four organisms as they are like that, we cannot be able to tell. We can't tell class that this organism, or which one is a chick, which one is a fish, which one is a pig. We cannot tell. We can't tell class. That is a modification by descent, and also a good explanation and example of uh, showing that there is a common ancestor where these embryos are coming from. In the early stage of development, all these embryos have got a nerve cord. They have a nerve cord, all of them similar structures. I can say one, they have the what? They all have a nerve cord. They all have a nerve cord as one, which becomes the spinal cord, which we are saying will develop to become a spinal cord that will also, I mean, that will develop to become a spinal cord as the organism grows. And then number two, we can also talk about also, they also have a supporting rod or a notochord. They all have a supporting rod. They all have a supporting rod, or we can call that a notochord. They all have a supporting rod, or we call that a notochord, or we can call that a notochord. So what we are saying, which also becomes a vertebral column, which becomes a vertebral column, the vertebral column, which becomes the vertebral column. The vertebrate embryos also have the gill slit as number 3. They all have the what? They also have gill slits. They all have gill slits. They all have gill slits, and then also a fish-like heart, gill slit, a fish-like heart, and also a tail. We can mention many points there. They also have a what? They have a tail also. So what we are saying is that these are similar structures, or these are similarities that we can also find in we can find these features in fish, as these embryos of each other, of each of them, they develop, they lose these features and begin to look like the vertebrate group to which they belong. As you can see, we are saying as these develop, we are saying from A to go to stage B. At A, we can't tell. At stage A, they all look alike. They all look alike at A. We can agree to that. At B, which we can see at B, at stage B, there is kind of an adjustment, which we are saying they are losing certain features. There is losing certain features is taking place. The organisms are losing certain features there. And then at C, we say that they begin to look like the group to which they belong. C, we can actually see that they look like they look exactly at C, they look exactly like the group to which they belong. C, they begin to look exactly like the group to which they belong. You can now even see this is a baby here. You can see this is a baby. But at this stage, we're not going to tell that this is a baby. We're not going to tell. The baby which is shown at stage C, which is at the latest stage, you can't tell. You can't tell. Check, for example, if I'm going to say also, if I'm going to say that this, I'm saying this one, and this one, the way they look alike, how can you tell that this is a human being and this is a pig? You can't tell that. You can't tell that. That is to show that there is evidence of evolution. Let me just quickly go and talk about let me talk about genetic similarities. Genetic similarities, which we did also in topic 1 and topic 5, where we talked about the DNA in chromosome, the DNA, where we talked about the DNA there. The DNA codes for the life, codes for the formation of proteins, protein molecules in cells. Obviously, we said that the DNA, it actually affects the structure and functioning of an organism. DNA makes up the genes that parents pass on to their offsprings. I'm sure this can also make very good sense. They also make DNA make up the genes. They make up the genes that parents pass on to offsprings. So obviously we are able to tell the family tree. We are able to tell the descendants of different families as a result of the DNA that is in the genes which the parents are passing to their children, which is contained in the gametes that we talked about in reproduction. So comparing similarities and differences between DNA in different groups of organisms can show evolutionary relationships comparing similarities class. We compare the similarities, comparing the similarities between DNA in different groups of organisms can show evolutionary relationships. It can show evolutionary relationships between them. So studies on cell proteins and nucleic acids. I'm sure that you remember to say nucleic acids. We are talking about the DNA, of course, and also the RNA, show similarities in cell chemistry in a wide range of organisms. Cell chemistry, cell chemistry in wide range of organisms. Close similarities in the DNA of different species indicate that the species are related. Close similarities, close similarities that we are saying in the DNA of different organisms indicate that the species are related. They inherited the DNA from a common ancestor. That is why they are what they have got. They are close similarities in those DNA. The organism that have more differences in their protein and nucleic acids also, or as nucleic acid sequences, also shows that they are less closely related. Where differences exist, it means that the organisms are less closely related in the evolutionary sense. In the evolutionary sense, they are not closely related compared to those with what? With more common sequences. The common sequences, the more common sequences are, the closeness, the organisms can be said that they are related. The closeness of the organisms. Are we together there? The closeness in the sequence, the more common sequences are within or amongst the compared organisms, are the more closely the organisms are. And then I think I can as well just talk about the chemical similarity, which is also one thing that can also be, the chemical similarity can as well be explained by the similarity or the DNA. It is also still similar. It is also still similar to what? To DNA. It is more or less similar to DNA, which we are saying chemical similarities occur as a result of genetic similarities, which is very true. Chemical similarities, they occur as a result of what? Of genetic similarities, which I am sure that you remember that DNA determines the chemical makeup of organisms. And then obviously related organisms share certain chemical features which they inherited from a common ancestor. They inherited such chemical features from a common ancestor, which I'm sure that I've already explained. For example, we have got the specific proteins that are needed for human vision or of human color vision are exactly the same as those found in the great apes and monkeys who live in Africa and Asia. The color vision we are saying the specific protein for color vision, which is found in the which we are saying that are needed for color vision in humans are exactly the same as those that are found in the monkeys and apes that are found in Africa and Asia, which is also suggesting that these species, they evolved from what? From a common ancestor. We have got another example of the cytochrome C, which is a protein that is evolved in the reaction of cellular respiration in mitochondria. In mitochondria cellular respiration, there are some identical amino acids in the cytochrome C protein of a wide range of species. The amino acid in the cytochrome C protein of humans and chimpanzee are identical. That amino acid for of humans and chimpanzee are identical. They differ from those of the rhesus monkeys, but we are saying, by only one amino acid, which suggests that humans and chimpanzee and the rhesus monkeys are closely related. I'm sure if you remember, if you look on the cladogram, if you look on the phylogenetic tree diagram, we always find out that the humans are closely related to chimpanzee. And then that is also a good example that is also explaining the evidence of evolution. With that in mind, we can also talk about the hemoglobin, the protein that has been studied also is the hemoglobin, which is the protein that gives the red coloration on blood, which we are talking about there. It's an example. Again, I think last but not least, which I just want to give is what the last one, which is one key point is biogeography. Biogeography, biogeography is very important. Other point that I should not close or that I must not forget. Biogeography, the distribution of living organisms, uh, is the distribution of living organisms, distribution of living organisms on the earth. We call that biogeography. The distribution of the distribution of living organisms on the earth is called what? Is called biogeography. So what I want you to understand is that distribution of living organisms on earth. I just want to correct something. Distribution of living organisms on earth. So let me just quickly explain some few points there with regard to biogeography that I must, as you all just quickly touch. I must quickly just touch some few items there, which I want you to take note of. That we have got the issues of the biogeography. We talk about the camels as a good example. We can, e.g., we can talk about the camels as a good example of that. The camels are an example. So we can talk about this as to say, today the camel family, actually it includes different types of camels. Today the camel family, it includes different types of camels. All of today's camels are what are descendants. They actually descended they actually descended from the same camel ancestor. All the camels that we see today, they actually descended from the same camel ancestor. These ancestors that actually we can explain were found and lived in North America about 1 million years ago. The exact or the father, the ancient camel ancestor was found in North America, which lived millions of years ago, but we can find them in different areas or in different parts of the world. So early North American camels, they migrated to other places. That is biogeography, the distribution that we are talking about. So early North American camels migrated to other places. Actually, for example, we can talk about some of them went to East Asia via a land. They actually some of them are explained to or are believed to say that they went to East Asia, which was through a land bridge during the last ice age. They went to East Asia via the land bridge, which happened also during which actually took place during the last ice age. And then a few of them also made it to what? They made it all the way to Africa from North America, as I've said. Many of them also made all the way to Africa. Others went also to South America by crossing also they also crossed the Isthmus of Panama. And also we also talk about once all the camels actually reached these different places, they actually evolved differently. When the camels migrated all the way from North America, they went some to East Asia, some to South America, some to Africa. As they reached to their destinations, they evolved differently, and then they evolved adaptations also that were suited for them to for what? For that particular environment where they were living. So the adaptation, I mean the evolving, which each of the camels went through was a good uh, adaptation to the environment which they found themselves in. So in that you should understand that through natural selection, actually it is the one that actually helped. We are saying that through natural selection, descendants of the original camel ancestors, through natural selection, actually the descendants of the original camel ancestors evolved the diversity that we have today. It happened through natural selection. I can as well confirm you another typical example, which is of the island biogeography, which is of the Finch's birds, which were started by what? By Charles Darwin in his theory of natural selection. Charles Darwin, where he talked about the what? The biogeography of those islands, which yield some of the best evidences that we can use for evolution. You can consider these birds as the finches that were disturbed, which Lamarck explained, the finches birds that Lamarck actually studied. So we can actually understand that those birds, they went through different natural selection, and then we can talk about their beaks evolved to the different types of the foodstuffs that they were eating. Each bird has to develop a beak that was suitable to the type of the food which was found in the habitat that they were in. So I'm saying we have the camels too. I'm talking about the finches birds, the Galapagos Island, the Galapagos finches birds, which were studied by what? By Charles Darwin. They actually show we can actually talk about uh, the independent adaptation, which was actually taking place due to what? Due to natural selection. Due to natural selection, we can have the diversity, or we came up to have the varied finches that we can talk about, the different beaks that are there that we can explain today. So please, class, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that this can make a good understanding and good sense to you. Don't forget that this evolution is quite a very key topic which you should not go to exam without understanding and having the full knowledge of it. You have a beautiful day, and don't forget to keep on putting on, turning on or following on your notifications such that this year we break the record through Metric Hub. Have a good day.